You've been played. Not once, not twice. Your entire life. And the worst part? You didn't even know it was happening. You thought you were making your own decisions. You thought you were in control. But the truth is someone else has been pulling the strings all along. Not with force. Not with obvious cruelty. But with something far more dangerous, your own emotions. They knew exactly which buttons to press. They knew how to make you feel guilty when you said no. They knew how to make you doubt yourself when you stood your ground. They knew how to make you feel selfish for putting yourself first. And you fell for it, every single time. Because you never saw the invisible hands manipulating your feelings, steering your choices and turning you into someone else's puppet. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote that the masses are controlled not by chains but by their own predictable reactions. And that's exactly what's been happening to you. You've been conditioned to react, to feel, to respond exactly the way they need you to. And as long as you keep reacting, you'll keep being controlled. But here's the thing. Once you see the strings, they lose their power. Once you understand the game, you stop being the piece. And that's what this video is about. Not just exposing how you've been manipulated, but showing you how to become completely unmanipulable. So if you're done being someone's emotional pawn, if you're ready to take back control of your mind and your life, then comment, "I see the strings now." And let's begin your transformation. Because what you're about to learn will change everything. Let's start with the foundation. Every manipulator, whether they know it or not, operates on one fundamental principle. Control your emotions, control your choices. It's that simple. And it's that devastating. Think about the last time someone made you feel guilty. Maybe it was a friend who made you feel bad for not being available. Maybe it was a partner who made you feel selfish for having boundaries. Maybe it was a family member who weaponized your love against you. In that moment, what did you do? You probably gave in. You probably said yes when you wanted to say no. You probably sacrificed your own needs to make them feel better. And why? Because they triggered an emotional response in you. Guilt, shame, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as a bad person. That emotional response overrode your logic. It bypassed your rational mind and went straight to your heart. And once they got your heart involved, your mind followed. Machiavelli warned about this in The Prince. He said that a ruler must understand that men are governed more by their fears and desires than by reason. And he was right. When someone controls your emotional state, they control your decisions. They don't need to force you. They don't need to threaten you. They just need to make you feel a certain way. And you'll do the rest. You'll convince yourself that giving in is the right thing to do. You'll rationalize your compliance. You'll even defend the person manipulating you, because your emotions have hijacked your judgment. This is why logical arguments don't work against manipulation. You can know intellectually that someone is using you. You can see the pattern. You can even tell yourself you won't fall for it again. But the moment they trigger that emotional response, logic goes out the window. Your amygdala, the emotional center of your brain, takes over. And it doesn't care about logic. It cares about avoiding pain and seeking comfort. So the manipulator doesn't need to be smarter than you. They just need to be better at triggering your emotions. And most people are incredibly easy to trigger, because they've never learned to separate their emotions from their identity. They think feeling guilty means they are guilty. They think feeling selfish means they are selfish. They think feeling afraid means there's real danger. But here's the truth that will set you free. Emotions are not facts. They're signals. And signals can be manipulated. Once you understand this, you realize that every time you've been manipulated, it wasn't because you were weak. It was because you were predictable. Your emotions followed a pattern, and someone learned that pattern and used it against you. The first step to becoming unmanipulable is to recognize this, to see that your emotional reactions have been turned into levers, and whoever knows which levers to pull owns your behavior. But that ends now. Now let's talk about the most insidious form of manipulation, the kind you never see coming. The kind that doesn't feel like manipulation at all, because it doesn't come wrapped in cruelty or aggression. It comes wrapped in kindness. And that makes it deadly. Think about the people who have controlled you the most in your life. Were they all tyrants? Were they all obviously toxic? Probably not. In fact, the ones who had the most power over you were probably the ones who were nice to you, the ones who helped you, the ones who were there for you when you needed them. And that's exactly how they got you, because they created a debt, an emotional debt, and now without you even realizing it, you owe them. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He wrote that benefits should be given little by little, so that they may be better enjoyed. What he meant was that small, consistent acts of kindness create a stronger bond than one large gesture. Because each small favor builds dependency, each small act of help makes you feel obligated. And over time you start to believe that you owe this person your loyalty, your time, your compliance. This is how the most dangerous manipulators operate. They don't demand, they give, and their giving becomes a chain. You start to feel guilty for saying no. You start to feel like you're betraying them if you put yourself first. You start to believe that rejecting their requests means rejecting their kindness, and so you stay trapped, not by cruelty but by obligation. You've been conditioned to see kindness as inherently good, and it can be, but kindness in the hands of a manipulator is a tool. It's not generosity. It's an investment. They're investing in your guilt. They're planting seeds of obligation that they'll harvest later. And when they come to collect, you won't even realize you're being manipulated. How can someone so good to you be using you? But that's the genius of it. The most effective control doesn't look like control. It looks like care. It looks like friendship. It looks like love. And that's why it works. Because you drop your guard. You let them in. You trust them. And once they have your trust, they have your compliance. So here's the harsh truth you need to accept. Not everyone who is kind to you has your best interests at heart. Some people are kind because they're genuinely good, but others are kind because they're strategic. And until you learn to tell the difference, you'll keep being played. The way to spot this kind of manipulation is to watch for the pattern. Does their kindness come with conditions? Do they remind you of what they've done for you? Do they make you feel guilty when you set boundaries? Do they use their past help as leverage in present situations? If the answer is yes, then their kindness was never about you. It was about control. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Which brings us to the next level of awareness, understanding what they're really exploiting. Because manipulators don't just prey on your emotions at random. They study you. They observe you. They find your weak spots, and then they exploit them with surgical precision. Everyone has a weakness, a need that drives them, a fear that controls them, a desire that blinds them. And the people who want to control you will find that weakness and weaponize it. If you crave validation, they'll give you just enough approval to keep you chasing more. If you fear rejection, they'll threaten to withdraw their affection whenever you don't comply. If you need to belong, they'll make you feel like you're on the outside unless you fall in line. If you desire love, they'll dangle it just out of reach, making you work harder and harder to earn it. This is not accidental. This is a strategy. Machiavelli wrote that a wise prince should never ignore the ambitions and desires of others, for these are the handles by which men are moved. In other words, if you want to control someone, find out what they want, then use it. And that's exactly what's been done to you. Someone identified your core need. Maybe it was the need to be seen as a good person. Maybe it was the need to avoid conflict. Maybe it was the need to be loved. Whatever it was, they found it. And they turned it into a lever. Now every time they pull that lever, you react. You comply, you bend, you sacrifice, and you do it willingly. Because it feels like you're choosing it. But you're not. You're responding to a trigger. And until you recognize that trigger, you'll keep falling for it. Here's the brutal reality. Your weakness is not your fault, but staying blind to it is. Everyone has vulnerabilities. That's part of being human. But if you don't know your own weak spots, someone else will. And they'll use them to steer your life in the direction that benefits them. So ask yourself right now, what is the one need that makes you compromise yourself? What's the thing you're so afraid of losing that you'll tolerate disrespect to keep it? What's the desire that makes you say yes when you should say no? Be honest. Because the moment you identify it, you take away their power. You stop being reactive. You stop being easy. You stop being controllable. And that terrifies them. Because a person who knows their own weakness is a person who can't be played. Now drop a comment and tell me, what's one weakness you've seen others exploit? Not in you, in others. Because recognizing it in someone else is the first step to seeing it in yourself. And once you see it, you can protect it. Now let's talk about the antidote. The one thing that makes you immune to all of this. And it's not what most people think. It's not building thicker skin. It's not learning to argue better. It's not even cutting people off. It's detachment. Emotional detachment. The ability to observe your emotions without being ruled by them. The ability to feel something without letting it dictate your behavior. This is the armor that makes you unmanipulable. Because if you don't react, they have nothing to work with. Manipulators rely on your emotional investment. They need you to care. They need you to fear. They need you to feel guilty or ashamed or desperate. But the moment you stop emotionally investing in their games, the manipulation collapses. Machiavelli said it best. Never let your emotions cloud your judgment, for a calm mind is a weapon no enemy can disarm. And that's exactly what emotional detachment gives you. A calm mind, a clear perspective, the ability to make decisions based on strategy, not feelings. Now let me be clear, detachment is not the same as not caring. You can still care about people. You can still have relationships. You can still love and connect. But you do it consciously. You do it with your eyes open. You don't let your emotions be used against you. Think about it this way. When someone tries to make you feel guilty, what happens if you don't feel guilty? When someone tries to make you afraid, what happens if you're not afraid? When someone tries to make you chase their approval, what happens if you don't need it? The manipulation fails. Because manipulation is a transaction. They give you an emotional stimulus. You give them a behavioral response. But if you break that cycle, if you stop responding, the transaction ends. They push the button, nothing happens. They pull the string, you don't move. And suddenly they have no power. This is why detachment is the ultimate power move. It's not aggression. It's not revenge. It's simply refusing to play the game. But here's the hard part. Most people are terrified of detachment because they think it means being cold. They think it means being alone. They think it means not feeling anything. But that's not what it is. Detachment is emotional discipline. It's the ability to feel without being controlled by what you feel. It's the space between stimulus and response, and in that space is your freedom. When someone says something designed to hurt you, detachment lets you observe the intention without absorbing the pain. When someone tries to guilt you, detachment lets you recognize the manipulation without falling into the trap. When someone threatens to leave unless you comply, detachment lets you call their bluff. Because you're no longer emotionally dependent on their presence. You're no longer willing to sacrifice your dignity to keep them around. And that shift, from emotional dependence to emotional autonomy, is what transforms you from a target into a strategist. So practice this. The next time someone tries to manipulate you, pause. Don't react. Don't defend. Don't explain. Just observe. Watch what they're trying to do. Watch how they're trying to make you feel, and then make a conscious decision about how you want to respond. Not based on emotion, based on strategy. That's detachment. That's power, and that's what makes you untouchable. But detachment is only half of the equation, because if you want to truly protect yourself, you can't just stop reacting. You need to start observing. You need to learn to read people the way they've been reading you. This is what Machiavelli called the art of calculated perception. The ability to see beyond words, to recognize patterns, to understand motives, and to predict behavior. Most people take others at face value. They listen to what someone says and believe it. They see a smile and think it means happiness. They hear an apology and think it means remorse. But words are the easiest thing to fake. Anyone can say sorry. Anyone can say they care. Anyone can say they'll change. But behavior doesn't lie. Patterns don't lie. And once you start observing patterns instead of listening to words, You see people for who they really are. Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see but few can feel. What he meant is that most people only see the surface. But the ones who pay attention, the ones who observe patterns, consistency, and intent, those are the ones who truly understand. So here's how you start. Stop listening to what people say. Start watching what they do. Do their actions match their words? Do they follow through on promises? Do they treat you the same in private as they do in public? Do they respect your boundaries when no one's watching? Do they only reach out when they need something? These patterns tell you everything. And once you start seeing them, you realize how many people in your life are performing. They're showing you a version of themselves that's designed to get what they want. But their true character shows up in the small moments. In how they react when you say no. In how they treat people who can't do anything for them. In what they do when they think no one's paying attention. This is the mirror Machiavelli talked about. You hold it up to people, not to judge them, not to expose them, but to see them clearly. And when you see them clearly, you stop being surprised. You stop being disappointed. You stop being hurt by the same behaviors over and over. Because you saw it coming. You recognized the pattern, and you made a strategic decision about how to handle it. Now here's the deeper level. Once you start observing others, you also need to observe yourself. Because manipulators read you the same way. They watch how you react. They notice what makes you uncomfortable. They see what you avoid. And they use that information. So you need to become aware of your own patterns. What do you do when you feel guilty? Do you over-explain? Do you apologize excessively? Do you give in immediately? What do you do when you feel afraid? Do you freeze? Do you try to please? Do you hide? These are the tells that manipulators look for. And if you don't control them, they will be used against you. So practice self-observation. Notice your automatic reactions. Notice when you start to feel uncomfortable. Notice when you're about to say yes, but you really mean no. And in those moments, pause. Choose a different response. Break your own pattern. Because when you become unpredictable, you become unmanipulatable. They can't push your buttons if you've rewired them. They can't pull your strings if you've cut them. And that's the power of the Machiavellian mirror. You see them. You see yourself. And you play the game with full awareness, which brings us to one of their most powerful tools and how to turn it into yours. Fear. It's the weapon of choice for almost every manipulator, because fear works. It's fast. It's effective. And it bypasses logic entirely. They use fear to keep you small, to keep you compliant, to keep you from challenging them. They make you afraid of losing them, afraid of being alone, afraid of conflict, afraid of judgment, afraid of rejection. And as long as you're afraid, you'll do whatever it takes to avoid that fear. You'll stay in situations that hurt you. You'll tolerate behavior you know is wrong. You'll sacrifice your own needs just to keep the peace. But here's what Machiavelli understood that most people don't. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is a tool. And whoever learns to use it consciously becomes the one in control. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Now, this doesn't mean you should go around trying to scare people. What it means is that you should stop being afraid of being feared. Stop being afraid of other people's discomfort. Stop being afraid of setting boundaries. Stop being afraid of saying no. Because the moment you stop fearing their reactions, they lose their leverage. Think about it. Why do you tolerate disrespect? Because you're afraid of the confrontation? Why do you say yes when you mean no? Because you're afraid of disappointing them. Why do you stay silent when you should speak up? Because you're afraid of the consequences. But what if you weren't afraid? What if you were willing to lose them? What if you were willing to be disliked? What if you were willing to walk away? Suddenly they have no power. Because fear only works when you're attached to the outcome. But when you detach, when you accept the worst case scenario and realize you'd be fine, fear loses its grip. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop being afraid of losing something, you become more likely to keep it. Because people respect strength. They respect boundaries. They respect someone who isn't desperate for their approval. but they take advantage of fear. So you need to flip the script. Instead of being the one who's afraid, become the one who's willing to walk. Become the one who's comfortable with conflict. Become the one who doesn't flinch when someone raises their voice or threatens to leave. This doesn't mean you're aggressive. It means you're grounded. It means you're not reactive. It means you've made peace with the idea that not everyone will like you. And that's fine, because you're not here to be liked. You're here to be respected. And respect comes from being unmoved, from being someone who can't be intimidated, from being someone who uses fear strategically, not emotionally. So the next time someone tries to scare you into compliance, recognize it. See the tactic for what it is, and instead of reacting, respond with calm, with clarity, with strength. Let them see that their fear tactics don't work on you, and watch how quickly they adjust. Because manipulators are opportunists. They go after the easy targets. But when you become difficult, when you refuse to be afraid, they either respect you or they move on. Either way, you win. And that brings us to one of the most underrated weapons in your arsenal. Silence. Most people think power comes from speaking, from explaining, from defending, from proving. But the truth is, silence is far more powerful, because silence makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to fill the void. It puts the pressure back on them. And for a manipulator, that's terrifying. Machiavelli knew this. He said that wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools speak because they have to say something. And manipulators rely on you being the fool. They rely on you explaining yourself. They rely on you defending your choices. They rely on you breaking under the pressure of their silence or their accusations. But the moment you stop talking, the game changes. Think about the last time someone accused you of something. What did you do? You probably defended yourself. You explained. You tried to prove you weren't what they said you were. And in doing so, you gave them control. Because now you're on the defensive. Now you're reacting to their narrative. Now you're working to earn their approval. But what if you said nothing? What if you just looked at them calmly and stayed silent? What would happen? They'd panic. Because they need your reaction. Your defensiveness confirms their power. Your explanation gives them ammunition. Your guilt proves they got to you. But your silence? Your silence says, I don't need to prove anything to you. And that's terrifying to someone who's used to controlling you. Silence is the ultimate power move because it's the refusal to engage. It's the refusal to play their game. It's the statement that says, your opinion of me is not my responsibility. And when you embody that, you become untouchable. Now, this doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak strategically. You speak when there's something to gain. You speak when it serves you. But you don't speak to defend. You don't speak to explain. You don't speak to fill the uncomfortable void. You let the silence do the work. Because silence forces them to reveal themselves. When you don't react, they escalate. And in that escalation, they show their true colors. They show that it was never about communication. It was about control. And once you see that, you know exactly who you're dealing with. So practice this. The next time someone tries to guilt you, manipulate you, or provoke you, stay silent. Just observe. Let the discomfort sit with them. And watch how quickly the mask falls. Watch how quickly they reveal what they really want. And then with full awareness, decide if you want to engage at all. That's the power of silence. It's not a weakness. It's a strategy. It's calm. It's control. And it's one of the most effective ways to disarm a manipulator. But beyond the tactics, beyond the strategies, beyond the silence and the detachment, there's one shift that changes everything. And that's the shift in perspective. The shift from victim to strategist. Most people, when they're being manipulated, ask the wrong question. They ask, why are they doing this to me? And that question keeps them trapped. Because it assumes you're the victim. It assumes you're helpless. It assumes their behavior is about you. But it's not. It's about them. It's about what they want. It's about what they're trying to gain. And the moment you shift your question from why me to what do they want, everything changes. This is what Machiavelli called the ruthless reframe. The ability to detach from the emotional story and see the strategic reality, because manipulation is not personal, it's tactical. They're not doing this because you're weak. They're doing this because it works. They're not targeting you because you're flawed. They're targeting you because you're available. And once you see it as a strategy rather than an attack, you stop taking it personally. You stop being hurt. You stop being confused. Instead, you start analyzing. What are they trying to get from me? What do they gain if I comply? What do they lose if I say no? What pattern are they following? What lever are they trying to pull? These questions shift you from emotional reaction to strategic observation. And in that shift, you gain power. Because now you're not reacting. You're analyzing. You're not defending. You're deciding. You're not being played. You're playing. And this is the mindset that makes you unmanipulable. Because you stop seeing yourself as the target and start seeing yourself as the strategist. You stop asking why this is happening and start deciding how you're going to respond. And that response is no longer based on emotion. It's based on what serves you. So here's the reframe. Every time someone tries to manipulate you, instead of feeling hurt or confused, get curious. Ask yourself, what are they trying to get? And then ask, do I want to give it to them? If the answer is yes, fine. Give it consciously. Not because you were manipulated, but because you chose to. But if the answer is no, then don't. Set the boundary. Walk away, stay silent. Whatever it takes. But do it from a place of clarity, not confusion. Do it from a place of power, not pain. This ruthless reframe is what separates the manipulated from the unmanipulatable. It's the difference between being a pawn and being a player. And once you make that shift, there's no going back. Because you've seen the game, and you can't unsee it. So let's bring it all together. You started this video as someone who's been played. Someone who's been controlled by invisible hands pulling their emotions. But now you know. You know that manipulation is about emotional control. You know that kindness can be a weapon. You know that your weaknesses can be exploited. You know that detachment is your armor. You know that observation is your mirror. You know that fear can be your ally. You know that silence is your power. You know that the right question changes everything. And with that knowledge, you are no longer manipulable. Because the game only works when you don't know you're playing. But now you see the board. You see the pieces. You see the moves. And most importantly, you see yourself, not as a victim, but as a strategist. This is your transformation. From emotional prey to psychological power. From someone who reacts to someone who chooses. From someone who's controlled to someone untouchable. Machiavelli said that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. But I'll take it further. The first sign of a powerful person is that they cannot be moved by manipulation. They cannot be guilt-tripped into compliance. They cannot be shamed into silence. They cannot be scared into submission. They are calm. They are detached. They are aware. And they are in control. That's who you are now. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become conscious. You've stopped letting your emotions be used against you. You've stopped letting people play you like a puppet. You've stopped being predictable. And in doing so, you've become powerful. So here's what I want you to do. If this video opened your eyes, if it gave you clarity, if it made you realize that you've been played and you're done with it, drop this affirmation in the comments. Say, I choose power over emotion. Say it out loud. Say it with conviction. Because that statement is your declaration. It's your line in the sand. It's your commitment to never again be someone's emotional pawn. And if you're serious about this transformation, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this channel is for people who are done being weak, done being nice, done being controlled. This is for the strategists, the observers, the ones who see the game and refuse to lose. And if that's you, then welcome. You're exactly where you need to be. Now go out there and live like someone who cannot be moved. Live like someone who sees the strings. Live like someone who's chosen power over emotion. Because nobody can manipulate you if you know this. And now you know.